2004. My specialty at the time was RSP meltdowns, where I helped people get their money out of their RSPs tax-free. And I managed to work my way up into the Cayman Island hedge fund industry.
Okay, sorry, Brandon. I'm gonna stop you here. We're gonna have to start this all over again. We've been having a debate here behind closed doors. I just realized I didn't hit the go live button. I thought it went automatically, but apparently it doesn't. So we're going to have to start this debate again. I apologize to the candidates who have made their opening statements. You know what? I'm going to start in reverse order this time. I'm going to start with Jacques Boudreau and let him make his opening statement, and we'll let the candidates that have unfortunately made their opening statements to a non-audience. Hey, guys. Yes, thank you, Josh. Josh Hardy says we're live now. And I mean, look, Lauren and Golok had some great opening statements. You guys should have heard them. You'll hear them again. Hopefully I haven't thrown them off their game here. Ladies and gentlemen, it brings me a lot of pleasure to introduce our candidates for Libertarian Party leader. This is the first time in party history that I'm aware of that we've had so many candidates for party leader. We've got 5 candidates running for leadership, so there's a lot of excitement. I'm certainly excited about this. This is probably one of my last acts as leader of the Libertarian Party of Canada. I've got 1 week left with my duties. And next week on August 14th and 15th, we're having our convention in Edmonton, and we will elect a new party leader. And so you're going to meet all 5 of the candidates for party leadership today in this on this forum. And if you have any, the format is going to be this. They're going to give a 2-minute opening statement. A couple of them already gave it to Dead Air, and I'm going to give them another chance. Then I have a number of questions prepared for them, and they're going to have 2 minutes to answer those questions each, and then they're going to have 2 minutes worth of closing statements. I want to hear from you guys. If there are any questions you want to ask these candidates, now is your chance. This is the format to do it. I'd like to go ahead and comment in the comment section. We're broadcasting on Facebook and YouTube simultaneously. So if you're on our Facebook party, the Libertarian Party of Canada Facebook page, go to the broadcast stream, and underneath the post, comment what your question is, and I'll try to get to it if there's time. And if you're on YouTube, I believe there's a dialogue box on the side, and I'll get those as well. We have already Josh wishing everyone good luck. He's coming at us from YouTube. And if you're on Facebook or YouTube watching this, feel free to ask your questions. All right. We're doing this one more time for real, and we're going to go to Jacques Boudreau, and allow him 2 minutes to give his opening statement. All right, Jacques. Can you hear me, Jacques?
Yes. Thank you, Tim.
Beautiful. I can hear you too. Okay, you got 2 minutes start.
Okay. Well, hello, everyone. I'm going to explain to you why I'm running for the leadership of the party. There are basically 2 reasons, although in many ways, it's that I believe I could do a very good job of representing the party well. I am an actuary by trade. As a result, I know a great deal about financial security systems, including many such systems run by the government, CPP, OAS, Medicare, and I know what a ticking time bomb those are. Through my profession, I've had to deal or learn a great deal about fiscal and economic matters as well. And I'm widely read on a huge array of topics, including science, again, economics, fiscal matters, and of course, libertarianism, where I must be in the thousands of hours now, either reading or listening to broadcast or podcast. In my roles in actuary, I held several senior roles, including being an appointed actuary for about 10 years. And as a result, I've had to present numerous times to many audiences. And most of the time, I've received excellent feedback. I come across as polished, so I'm told, professional, knowledgeable. And I think I can turn those into, again, something that would be positive for the party, as I can and willing to conduct interviews or podcast or what have you. And and again, do so in a way that, let's face it, as libertarians, we are seen by mainstream as being on the fringe. I've had some experiences at the OLP, Ontario Libertarian Party, where we have people who unfortunately have contributed to, okay, well, I'm going to cut that one short and simply say I'm also bilingual, so I can do this across the country. And I've run in two federal provincials, two federal ones, one provincial, and I'm currently the interim leader of the OLP. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jacques. All right, we're going to move on to our next candidate for leader, Darcy Giroux. Let me add up the stream. Darcy, let's hear you. Can you hear me, first of all?
I can hear you, Tim.
Awesome. Well, I can hear you too. You're a little pixelated, but I'm going to go ahead and set my timer here, and you've got 2 minutes.
Okay. Well, again, first of all, I'd like to thank you, Tim. Everything you've done for the past 7 years, it's been great working with you, and I think I speak for all of us when I say we would be just as happy if you stuck around in the position. But for myself, I mean, we live in a country where our most basic fundamental rights and freedoms are at the mercy of a giant federal government. And these are rights and freedoms that are inalienable, meaning that, there's no authority in any state apparatus to rightfully aggress against them. And they're also intrinsic to human flourishing, the success of individuals and their families. And these things are being stripped away. It's easy to see where that road will end in despotism, a cruel and oppressive type of power at the hand of the state. And it's not enough to just rail against socialism in Canada, because socialism is already here. And to the extent that there is damage, it's only a matter of degree. So this party needs a strong, principled messaging based on the foundations of liberty. And there's no good reason to entertain boutique tax cuts and that nature of conservatism. The income tax needs to be abolished. The Bank of Canada needs to be abolished. We need a leader who will continue with that type of strong, consistent libertarian messaging that Tim Mullen's been producing for the past 7 years. And that's my vision for the party. Thanks.
Oh, right on 2 minutes there, Darcy. All right. Thank you, Darcy. And we're going to move on to Brandon Kirby. Brandon Kirby, let's see. Can you hear me all right, Brandon? Let's hear you.
I can hear you, and can you see my ugly face?
I can see your beautiful face there, Brandon, and you're sounding good on the mic, so I'm just going to remove myself. You have 2 minutes starting now.
Okay, thanks a lot, Tim. I appreciate your last 7 years worth of work. That's actually the reason why I knew that the Libertarian Party existed in this Canada, so I appreciate your activism. I'm Brandon Kirby. I have worked for 16 years in the financial sector. My opening gig was specializing in RSP meltdowns, where I helped clients get their money out of their RSPs without significant tax penalties. And I worked my way up as a tax consultant for 8 seasons, as a financial advisor and a mortgage broker. Eventually, I got involved with the Cayman Island hedge fund industry. So very proud of the work that I've done. I've done some work with mental health research, and currently I own a real estate company. I'm doing some cryptocurrency trading, and I'm an MBA student at the University of New Brunswick. In terms of libertarian activism, which I think is really important to ask, as for what's on our resumes with respect to that, I was a candidate in 2019. I initially came on board with the party to volunteer with respect to regional directing. So I was hoping to get some candidates. That's what I'm doing right now. I was a communications director. Some of you might recognize my ugly face and some of the vodcasts that we've done before. And I'm the chief of staff at the Libertarian Party currently. So this is not a pet project for me. This is something that I've been passionate about. This is something that is very much oriented with my career, which has been helping to mitigate tax burdens for clients. And this is something that somebody asked me, said, why should I vote for you as leader? It was somebody that I was trying to recruit as a candidate. And I said, how many people do you know are calling you on Friday nights, giving up their free time to ensure that this party is stronger tomorrow than it is today? And so that's the resume that I want to put forward. Thank you.
Right on the money there, Brandon. All right, we're going to move on to Golok, who has already given a great opening statement. He's going to have an opportunity to do again. My apologies, Golok, for
no problem.
broadcasting to no audience there. So the I guess consolation prize is that you get to do it again. So here you go. I'll give you 2 minutes, and you're just a little. Actually, I think you'll be in full frame here as soon as I remove myself. So go ahead, 2 minutes.
Hi, my name is Golok Budai. I was the Vancouver East candidate in 2019. I'm working getting my signatures now to do it again. I am a son of a Hungarian refugee. I learned the horrors of communism growing up from my Hungarian family. I had to learn real hard how to read because I was learning disabled. So I picked up a lot of things from a lot of classic liberals and economists and things like that. I really think the important thing is strategy. And I think we should have a Western strategy because it worked for Reform and Green. And this would be a strategy because largely starting in BC and Alberta, largely because strategic voting, the farther west you go, the less important it is because the government is selected before we get a chance to get counted. So I think we should look at marginals, we should look at non-marginal constituencies like, in fact, the landsliders, and we should try to make them marginal or defeat them, and then build up our cause, our brand, and everything else from that standpoint eastward. And thanks very much.
All right, thank you, Golok, and you took a minute and a half. Economy of words, second time around. Thank you. All right, we're moving on now to Lorne Warner. And again, Lorne, I apologize for making you do this a second time. Hopefully, it gave you some practice and you'll feel even more confident this time.
Oh, so, definitely.
Lorne, you got 2 minutes.
Thank you so much.
Starting now.
Well, thank you so much, Tim, and thank you for your service of 7 years. And hello, everyone, and thank you for allowing me to speak here today. So my name is Lorne Warner, and I'm an independent marketing and advertising contractor for many small and big businesses. I give lectures and speeches to small and medium-sized groups on how to help generating attention through social media and other various ways that help business succeed. I'm a practicing libertarian, and let me explain to you why I also self-identify as one. I was born without merit or privilege at all, and I did well in school, and in the midst of it, I had been diagnosed with childhood epilepsy. I grew up with a single parenting mother in poverty in a small town, so I was sick and thus became a product of government handouts, be it healthcare, be it public school, things that I felt were out of my control. I was given at the time experimental drugs for my epilepsy that throughout the years made me worse off than what is being offered for people with similar diagnoses. So I never wanted to see people go through what I went through. For me, that means no excuses, personal responsibility, and personal responsibility should rule the land, because excuses is how you create a comforting format through totalitarianism, as history has showed us for the past century. And the parties that are out to do that right now are every mainstream party, even with the conservatives to some extent. So I believe in us becoming more active within our communities and staying true to the party principles. That means going out there and having conversations with people. That means going out and demonstrating against child family services, which is an extension of residential school. I'm well traversed in Native American cultures through talking to people who are Native American, through my community and through neighboring communities. So, I'm a bit rustic in French, but other than that, it's a pleasure to be here, and thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lauren. And let me just take you out. Okay, so now we're going to move into the Q&A phase, and I've got a number of questions for the candidates. And I see a number of you are already adding questions into the comments. So please keep adding your questions into the comments, and I'll try to get to them if time allows. We've got 5 candidates, and they're each going to have 2 minutes to answer each question. I'm going to start with a different candidate each time because the first person to hear the question usually has a decided disadvantage. If you're the last person in the lineup, continually you'll have an advantage of having been able to formulate and think of your answer to the question. So we started with Jacques for opening statements. I'm going to start with Lauren and just go in reverse order, and we'll move to a different candidate to start the question and just keep that going through there in the spirit of fairness, I guess. So Lauren, I'm going to ask you this question first, and then we're going to move on to Golok, Brandon, Darcy, and Jacques. All right. So the first question is, what does the term libertarian mean to you? How would you define that term and its importance? And Lauren, you have 2 minutes starting now.
Thank you, Tim. So what that means to me is no excuses. Being libertarian means not being comfortable with the excuses that you prior would have given as a child. A child gets to make excuses all day long, but that changes as you become an adult. That changes with the culture that you're around in, right? So for me, personally, it means just absolutely no excuses. Individual responsibility is the law of the land for myself. It should be the law of the land for others. If some are not capable of it, they're a very small minority, because most people throughout history have shown to prevail that there are countries out there that have almost complete freedom at this point, and it's been a very gradual thing. We can make it happen even more so. Let Canada be the next case of that, right? Personal responsibility. Instead of having government give you all the money that they've given you the past year, reject it. Reject it and keep looking out for work. You have the pursuit of happiness, and what does that mean? That means at some point in time you're going to be miserable, you're going to be sad. These are natural emotions, these are feelings. If you just have one set emotion the entire time, you're never going to know what the real consequences of things are. And if you look at history of personal responsibility being taken away, look no further than every totalitarian state. And look at all the rights that got taken away. Let the government be responsible of you, they said. Every single one of them. And you ended up with 100 million plus people dead over the past century alone due to ideologies that allowed victim mentality. So I personally don't believe in that. That stuff is for children. It is not for adults. It's a thing personally that I believe in. And so going out and doing that and being active in your community and being a pillar of your community. Be responsible with yourself. Take care of yourself the way you would treat a person with a disability. So thank you for that.
All right, thanks, Lauren. And we'll move on to Golok. Golok, what does the term libertarian mean to you? What is its importance? You have 2 minutes.
Well, I think it's best explained on Tim Mullen's website. Freedom plus responsibility equals liberty. I would say in more great depth that it's about being able to keep more of what you earn, or all of it, if possible. It's about making sure that central authority isn't bullying the individual. It's the right to do as you want without getting as long as you don't cause any physical harm or theft to any other person. It's about being able to live your life unfeathered by state's authority slamming its iron fist. And it's about being able to go out and have a coffee, regardless of how many people have sniffles. Thanks very much.
All right. Thank you, Golok. And we're moving on now to Brandon Kirby. Brandon, what does the term libertarian mean to you, and what is its importance? You have two.
It's a fantastic question. Thanks, Tim. What I would say is you have to take a look at the non-aggression principle. That has to be the founding point of libertarianism. So when I say that, there's a thought experiment that I like to use. It doesn't come from an economist or a philosopher or a historian. It comes from a guy who got his degree in clown college, Penn Jillette. He says, imagine you have a gun and you see something heinous happening. Let's say a murder. Would you use the gun to prevent the murder of somebody you care about? I would. What about an assault, especially a perverse assault on someone you love? Yeah, I'd use the gun to stop it. What about a theft? I don't know that I'd fire the gun, but I might try to use it to scare the criminal off. What about to build a skating rink? Would you take out a gun, put it at somebody and say, give me your money, I want to build a skating rink? I wouldn't do that. Now, the problem with taxation is that it's extortion. It's a form of theft because if you don't pay your taxes, eventually, I mean, first your wages will get garnished, but eventually guys with guns are going to show up. They're going to demand payment. Every single government expenditure has to recognize that those funds were appropriated through force. And I think that's really going to change what's appropriate and what's inappropriate for us to be spending our tax dollars on. So to me, the libertarian movement is all about the use of non-aggression. We have to be a lot more peaceful, whether we're dealing arms to genocidal war criminals in Saudi Arabia, or whether we're poisoning the planet, or whether we're stealing business owners' money. We have to recognize that the government is the use of force. And I don't like force. I don't like violence. Libertarianism, to me, is peace.
Awesome timing there, Brandon. Thank you. And I was going to move on to Darcy, but I see he's dropped off the stream. I know he's in interior BC right now, where there's a bunch of forest fires on public lands with government-run fire departments and land management threatening those people there. So he might be running into some issues there with his internet connection. I'm going to move on then to Jacques Boudreau. And Jacques, I'm adding you to the stream. And what does the term libertarian mean to you? What's its importance? And you have to.
Well, libertarianism is founded on the non-aggression principle, which simply states that the initiation or the threat of initiation of force against the innocent is wrong. And by innocent here, I mean from a natural law perspective, not what the government tells us. We have, unfortunately, the history is replete of people who were absolutely innocent in terms of not harming others, who were deemed to be non-innocent, if you wish, and the government using this, of course, to attack them. This is, completely unacceptable. So from that principle, all kinds of stuff follows where the government right now is involved, where it has no business being involved. It means no central planning of any kind. It means that the help for those in need comes from others on a voluntary basis, never from coercion. And it means a much, much smaller government, possibly no government at all, although that's to be debated. But again, no central planning, no involvement of the government in our lives as long as we respect the freedom of others. It's pretty simple stuff, really. The principles are anyway. The implementation, of course, is again replete of people who have carved out different exceptions that don't really hold water. But those are the instances where we really have to push back against those who, again, try to justify, often for very weird reason, actions that they wouldn't want to take. So that's my view.
All right, perfect. Thank you, Lauren, or Jacques, sorry. And I see we have Darcy back in. Looks like you've managed to find a connection, so I'll give him a chance to answer this question as well. Darcy, what does the term libertarian mean to you? What's its importance? You have. Let's hear you first of all. Have you got a connection back? Yeah. Are you still? You're still in interior BC there, where the forest fires are threatening you, right?
Yeah, I'm indoors where the fire can't get at me.
All right. Well, hopefully you have a libertarian fire department around there somewhere that can protect you. So you don't have to rely on those status Joes. Anyways, Darcy, you have 2 minutes to answer the question. Start.
Perfect. Well, without repeating too many of the other great answers from these guys, naturally the non-aggression principle. A libertarian upholds liberty as its core principle. Autonomy, political freedom, voluntary association, freedom of choice, individualism. As a political system, we focus on the rights of the individual, their property rights, the repeal of unjust laws, laws against victimless crimes, decentralization. That's the most efficient means to solve a problem is on the local level, not the federal level. And privatization, removing the state from business, placing more control in the hands of the productive sector of the economy rather than the parasitic sector of the economy, the government. And yeah, to me, that's what libertarianism is. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Darcy. All right. So we're going to move on to the next question now. And the next question is, and we're going to start with Golok this time and continue in the same order. What is the difference between our party and the PPC, the Maverick Party, the True North parties? How will you differentiate the Libertarian Party from other parties who might have similar overlapping views? And Golok, I'll give you 2 minutes to go ahead and answer that question.
Well, I'd say the Maverick Party is very new, and it's very hard to have a good gauge on what they stand for specifically, aside from Western alienation issues. As far as the PPC goes, and the PPC is, I guess they would be happy with like 20% of the government still be alive, still being around on the federal level, and they're not too keen on a lot of the decentralization. I would say that Bernier has a history of supporting foreign aid while in government, and we do not support foreign aid at all. And we at least don't have anybody here that has a record of spreading that around. True North, of course, is a conservative thing. They made it quite clear it's not a libertarian movement, so that's more of Bernier's problem. But I would say that we have a strong principle on liberty. We are the party of principle. That's the U.S. party would even actually say, and it's a great line. And we're not going to give people's money away to as a redistribution to Ontario, Quebec, or foreign powers. It's just a bunch of a lot of these they want to do tax rebates and not tax cuts, and tax rebates are not cuts. Rebates are just saying you have to apply to get your money back. Now, a cut is mean you stop taking it, and that's how we're strong. We are steadfast for liberty. We always have been. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Golok. I'm going to move on to Brandon now, Brandon Kirby. And Brandon, same question to you. What is the difference between our party and parties like the PPC, the Maverick, True North? I'm sure there's some others. How will you differentiate the Libertarian Party from other parties who might have similar overlapping views? And Brandon, you have 2 minutes starting now.
Well, I really think you have to go right on down the line. I don't think you can give a generic answer to that other than the fact that we're a party founded on the non-aggression principle. I mean, because realistically, even Jack Layton, of all people, had criticized the Bank of Canada. So, there can be some overlap with any party. With respect, let's take the elephant in the room, the PPC, and that would, I would say there's quite a few differentiating factors between us. You take a look at Maxime Bernier's record on war. I mean, he voted along with Justin Trudeau, along with Stephen Harper and a lot of the current slate of conservative MPs who are in Parliament right now. He voted to partner with sex trafficking terrorists in Libya to topple the Gaddafis. I mean, this is not acceptable from any metric, whether it's national security. When you partner with people that are trying to kill us, that's not acceptable. When you partner with, let's take the metric of ethics, with people who are human trafficking, that's not okay. When you take the metric of expenditures, it's such a waste of money to be spending so much to have accomplished nothing on these stupid, pointless forever wars. Take the issue of the drug war. That's another stupid, pointless forever war that's just going to keep going on and on. Maxime Bernier wants to double down on that. I'm not okay with this. I think that it's a waste of money. It's an infringement on people's liberties. It's not helping people who are suffering with addictions. It's just bad all across the board. So I see infringement on liberties that have negative, deleterious impacts on the health, the economics, the ethics, the spiritual nature of Canadians. And I'm not okay with where they're at. I certainly don't support a merger with the PPC. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Brandon. Perfect timing. And we're moving on now to Darcy Giroux. Darcy, same question to you, sir. What is the difference between our party and parties like the PPC, the Maverick Party, the True North parties, and some of the other parties out there? How will you differentiate the Libertarian Party from those parties who might have some overlapping views? And Darcy, you have 2 minutes. Start.
Yeah, well, first of all, it's important to know that these are not libertarian-oriented parties. Max has continually shied away from being called the Libertarian and flat out rejected coalition building with libertarians. That's why he was unable to secure my support in the past. As for the Maverick Party, I have very little use for the separation if necessary, but not necessarily separation crowd. I fully support secession. I fully support the ideas of nullification. We'll see if the True North Party gets any legs. I don't think so. And like I said before, for us, liberty is the foundational principle. It's not just a popular buzzword. I don't see government as a tool to manage society somewhat less poorly. My platform will be an aggressive anti-government platform. And the Libertarian Party has been around for almost 50 years, and we've seen a lot of parties come and go, and we'll still be here when the rest of those guys are gone. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, Darcy. All right, and we're going to move on to Jacques Boudreau. Jacques, same question to you. What is the difference between our party and some of these other parties? How will you differentiate the Libertarian Party from parties who might have overlapping views? And Jacques, you have 2 minutes starting now.
Thank you. Well, I can't speak to the other parties other than the PPC since I don't know their platform. But for the PPC, let me put it this way. In past campaigns, I have pointed out to people that, and I do find this very funny almost, that the Conservative Party, the NDP, the Liberals, the Green, they may be at each other's throats, when in fact, if you look carefully, they may differ from each other only at the margins, maybe 5%. Now, the PPC, yeah, it's probably a little bit more. It might be 15% different from the other ones. But I dare say we are way more different than the other ones. And I would say that it's primarily driven by principle. I certainly would like our party to be highly principled, where given our set of beliefs, our premises, if you like, people could, if they're reasonably intelligent, determine in advance what the answer would be to certain questions. I mean, that's what principle means, is that you could look at these principles and guide your answer. I doubt very much that the PPC is like this. I listened to Bernier, and yes, some of the stuff he says, dismantling supply management. Yeah, I mean, we are in favor of that. And, there's no attempt of trying to differentiate ourselves from what he's saying. But there are many areas where, as far as I can tell, he's equivocating. And suddenly his principles are not there, right? I couldn't use the principles of the PPC to guess in advance what their answers are going to be. And that to me is a huge differentiator between the way I would like to see us go forward and the way they do things. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you, Jacques. All right. And finally, Lauren Warner, the same question to you, sir. What is the difference between our party and some of these other parties? How will you differentiate the Libertarian Party from parties who might have similar overlapping views with the Libertarian Party? And you have 2 minutes starting.
Well, thank you for the question. So I actually have prior involvement with PPC. I left the party and joined into the Libertarian Party because my core identity is libertarian, and if I see something that violates, I'm very nitpicky about what my views are personally, and it lines up identical to the Libertarian Party. Look, the People's Party of Canada is very much a hijacked platform. They try to act like they're a milk and toast libertarian. I've gone and met Maxime Bernier before at dinners when I was part of head of communications for the North Vancouver Island and Powell River. Most of the people there are talking about, and I'm not saying this is some sort of SJW stuff. They're talking about joking, not Maxime Bernier, but local people within certain ridings throughout BC and Alberta are talking about executing trans people and gay people. That maybe what should we do with them? Should we put them into mentally ill asylums? Should we put other people into that? So look, it's very much a party of one person that destroyed any credibility in the Conservative Party and destroyed his own credibility as well. In terms of allowing just anybody to join in, I was able to join in with the criminal background check. I have my certificate of authentication for helping found the party. At the same time, it didn't align with mine. I was head of communications for the North Island, and look, I don't know any of the other parties' particular platforms, but if they're anything like that, they're definitely not something to go for. You can agree with some certain things that Maxime says, but in terms of his party and his movement, it's very much a corrupt one. It's very much one that even makes me shudder by comparison of the Green Party to some extent. They're not the party of the people. It's a total fabrication. And to some extent, it's one mindset. It's hive colony. So thank you.
Great. Thank you, Lauren. All right. Okay. I think I'm going to ask 2 more questions, and then I'm going to get to the audience questions. There's a bunch of questions popping up in the audience, a bunch of ones on gun rights and some other ones. So I want to get to those questions. So I'm going to cut my questioning a little bit short, but I have 2 more questions left here. And I think, who did we start with last time? I think we started with Golok. So we're going to Brandon. Brandon, we didn't start with you last time, I don't think. Okay, so the next question I have for the candidates is, what do you think our primary platform focus should be? What do Canadians care about? What should we be focused on going into the next election? I guess primarily in coming up here in this fall potentially. Brandon, yeah, you've got. I didn't start with you last time, did I?
No, you didn't. What am I, chopped liver over here? You can't remember?
I can't remember. I got my 7 years of leading this herd of cats, man, has killed some brain cells. All right, Brandon, you got 2 minutes to answer that question. What should our primary platform focus be?
You know, it's a really good question. And one of the things that I'd like to do is focus on the executional component of libertarianism. So it's not only that we have these ideals, which are fantastic, the non-aggression principle, and we have this utopian vision of a strictly voluntarist society, which I agree with. I think that's fantastic. But at the end of the day, we also have to focus on what resonates with ordinary Canadians. So we have, for example, I remember there's one libertarian who's talking about, we've got to privatize Canada Post, have to privatize Canada Post. And I looked into the balance sheet, and what it was costing us per Canadian on average was 67 cents annually. Nobody cares. Now, if you take a look at Trudeau's infrastructure plan, this is costing the average Canadian $2,000 annually. People actually care about this. Like when I say, okay, you could have an extra $2,000 in your pocket, that actually means something to their day-to-day lives. And so what I want to do is focus on what has an impact on Canadians' everyday, day-to-day lives. Now, this varies. So, for example, where I live, the Green Party has a lot of strong support. So we really need to start focusing on free market environmentalism, because I really do believe we have a free market. We have a very green platform. I think we're greener than the Green Party, if you want to know the truth. Whereas if you take a look at Alberta, their biggest concern will be getting their goods to markets. And I support pipelines too, because they're a lot greener than in importing oil from Saudi Arabia via oil tankers. In rural New Brunswick, I can tell you it's a big issue to have a reduction of our gun control. There's so many infringements on Canadians' liberties, but if you go to Montreal, my old stomping grounds, they don't really care. So that's not something that I'd want to harp on. What I think we should be focusing on is the individual ridings and saying, okay, what's impacting your riding? And let's make a big issue out of that.
All right. Thank you, Brandon. And we're going to move on to Darcy Giroux. Darcy, what should our primary platform focus be going into the next election? And you have 2 minutes starting.
Well, without a doubt, it should be the economy. There's no greater threat to individuals and to their families in general than the continued deterioration of the Canadian economy. Abolish the income tax. I mean, when all the times I spent touring around with you, Tim, and I would always hear you say, if 100% of a person's If the seizure of 100% of a person's labor is slavery, at what percentage does it equip being slavery? And the income tax is an infringement on everything we as libertarians believe. It has to go. The continued cronyism and abuses of power by the state have to end. The clearest path to that is to take away their revenue stream that enables the political class to get away with the things that they're doing. So that means abolishing the income tax. That means taking away the printing press, abolishing the Bank of Canada, and restricting the power of these, and it's not just the MPs in Parliament. I mean, it's this huge bureaucratic nightmare that we have here in Canada. We have to find a way to restrict that. I think the best way to do it is to take away the money that they're using to fund it. Thanks.
All right. Thanks, Darcy. Moving on to Jacques Boudreau. Jacques, what should our party's primary platform focus be coming up in the next election? You have 2 minutes start.
Thanks. Well, I agree with Darcy that in terms of what resonates with people is the economy. Although I believe that the Libertarian platform would take care of that in a hurry through reduced taxation and bureaucratic nightmare and regulations and the like. I think again that there's plenty of good examples in Eastern Europe, for example, where when the government got out of the way, it's amazing how quickly the free market will pick up the slack. However, I'm very, very concerned about the censorship that the Liberal government is trying to put through. And I think that the Libertarian Party, in terms of platform, should unequivocally defend free speech. That's and another one that unfortunately does not resonate with the people, but it's nonetheless a terrible, terrible problem that we're facing. Maybe not in the immediate future, but for my children and my grandchildren, is the debt and the unfunded liabilities, which amount to $2.7 trillion. It's a massive, massive problem. I think that people who complain about Medicare in this country at this point have seen nothing yet. The 2030s and 40s are going to be horrible. And although it is a provincial responsibility, given the transfer payment from the federal government, I think a federal party needs to address this. All other parties are kicking the can down the road on this. Again, it's not acceptable, but I understand why they're doing it, because much better to let some poor sap take care of this 10 years from now while you get elected. But I think it's highly unprincipled to operate this way, highly unethical. And this is something that I would want to see addressed in our platform. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Jacques. All right. And we're moving on to Lauren Warner. And Lauren, same question to you, sir. What should our primary platform focus be going into this fall's election? And you have 2 minutes starting.
Thank you for the question, Tim. So our primary focus should be going and demonstrate, having conversations with people, letting people know that they can come out of the woodworks and self-identify with whether they identify with the party or not, and help participate in sort of, talking about how can we deregulate certain aspects of our bureaucracy that's been well entrenched for decades, and even over the past century. Look, ultimately, we need to go out and confront other party members, big, small, doesn't matter. We need to go out and talk, let people know what their rights are, right? There's certain aspects of government that say, well, you can't film us here because we said so, even though Canada is actually a one-party consent state, right? So we should be able to film what goes on. We should be able to report what's going on. We should be able to do all of these kind of things and have the conversations and demonstrate outside of government bureaucracies. And one of them, since the topic of the summer, through by which I mean by the government, not even the general public, has been talking of residential schools, but they're doing very little, if anything at all, to audit or end child family service programs that are legal abductions of people's children without any body cameras. When there was Rodney King, there was legislation put that all police force, for the majority, have to go out and wear body cameras. Social workers are in a much higher state of danger to themselves and to the community than a police officer generally is, speaking of which they can take your child away if they see fit. And then now you have to prove of your innocence because they're saying by word of mouth only that they're guilty, and they'll kick the cans down the road. They'll do all that. So we need to be able to say to them, hey, we're not accepting that anymore. And so that's part of what we need to be doing culturally.
All right. Thank you, Lauren. And finally, we're moving on to Golok Zibade. Hopefully I got your name right there. Sorry if I mispronounce it. And Golok, same question to you. What should the Libertarians' primary platform focus be going into this fall's election? And you have 2 minutes, sir. Start.
Well, I think it should be teaching as many people as possible out there that the federal government is just a bunch of, largely, except for maybe a few things, is just a bunch of civil servants giving money to other civil servants in usually Ontario, Quebec, and around the world, sometimes through local authorities like transit or whatever, when they need to get a vote in BC or something. And try to harp on that point a bit. I wrote something like this on my candidate website in Vancouver East. I'm not sure if I can say the website name, though. But the more important thing is, do we have candidates that are ready? Are we tactically set up? Do we? We need that Western strategy. We need the strategy that focuses on the landslide areas. We need to focus. The important thing is tactics. We need a bottom up perspective on this thing too, because we probably have a lot of good candidates coming in who have strong libertarian principles, and they're fighting the fight out there in the trenches, and we need to make sure that they matter and that we understand that they know how to talk to their constituents, because they hopefully live there, and they go grocery shopping in these areas, and they put out their trash in these areas. We need to make sure that these candidates are really first. There should be a respect of a local platform, and that's probably much more important than a top-down thing, because we want to decentralize, right? We want to end all this top-down stuff. So yeah, that would be the most important thing.
Great, thank you, Golok. And I was going to do one more question here, but I see one of our audience members actually asks the question in a more articulate way than I had planned to ask it. And so I'm going to use his question, and this question is going to go first to Darcy. And the question is from Trevor John Schmidt. What is your vision and strategy for the growth of the Libertarian Party? Where do you see the party in 5 years under your leadership? And maybe Darcy, can you tip your camera down a little bit so I can see your face over that? Perfect. There. Awesome. And Darcy, I'll give you 2 minutes to answer that question, starting.
Sure. Thanks, Tim. Well, my idea for the growth of the party is, the same idea that I bring to developing a platform or anything like that. It's the foundation of liberty. I want to see our party decentralized the same way I want to see the country decentralized. I want to see stronger regional representation. In 5 years, I mean, I don't want to make any promises about political expediency. I think everyone here understands the uphill battle we're in. But off the top of my head, in 5 years, I want to lead this party to develop a Tim Moen in every province, right? So that we have that type of leadership across the country. We have that type of representation across the country, and do it in a consistent, intelligent type of manner that where we're finding the best people to put into these roles, and we're helping them develop. That we're making sure that they are familiar with all of our foundational literature. That they have the means they need to get out there and do things on a local level. And I really see that as the key to our success, is embracing those types of ideas that we want to bring to government, embracing that within our party, decentralization, privatization even. I would like to see us look at privatizing our fundraising, having an incentive behind our fundraising. Sorry, Tim, for going over.
No worries. No worries. All right. And we're moving on to Jacques Boudreau. Same question to you, sir. What is your vision and strategy for the growth of the Libertarian Party? Where do you see the party in 5 years under your leadership? And I'll give you 2 minutes, Jacques.
Thank you. Well, it's education, education, education. Let's face it, we are facing a mainstream that has never fully considered our idea. If I hear one more time that I ought to move to Somalia in order to get a better life, if I'm so keen on libertarianism, my head's going to explode. The fact is that there's quite extensive literature defending our position in a very elegant way. We need to continue to demonstrate to people the flaws, the deep flaws in what we have. Now, in order to do all that, of course, there are all kinds of websites, blogs that exist already. I think what I would like to see is more coming from the party itself. Now, for that, we need volunteers. Now, I used to have, I recently retired last month. Prior to that, I found myself not having a lot of time to devote to the party. And I know that it's the case for many, many people. And I think the key to improving volunteerism is to cut it down to small sizes, because my experience at the OLP, and I think with this party as well, is that it's a handful of people who do the heavy lifting. If somebody only has an hour a month, then let's see if we could cut down the requirement of that person so that they can give us that hour. I draw from my experience with the Canadian Institute of Actuaries. I mean, there are not a lot of actuaries in this country, maybe a couple of thousand, and we depended heavily on contribution from people volunteering. So that's what I'd like to do. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Jacques. And we're moving on to Lauren here. Let me see if I can pull that question back up. What is your vision and strategy for the growth of the Libertarian Party? Where do you see the party in 5 years under your leadership? And Lauren, you have 2 minutes starting.
Thank you and it's a great question. Thank you, Trevor, for asking that. So for me, if it were under my control of the party, it would be localizing the strength. Not just every province has a Tim Moen or Lauren Warner or Brandon Kirby, but getting it in each local riding as possible, and not just dealing with only if there's one person who isn't well spoken. We want people who are well spoken across. We want people to be able to have their own individual mindset of how they think something goes. We can totally disagree on things, and that's a great factor that libertarians have, is we can disagree, but we disagree civilly. And I think, in having that opportunity to have the discourse and be able to talk about things, why not get involved in our local government? Why not demonstrate outside our city halls? You don't even have to be a member of the Libertarian Party. If you want to join an event, if you think that you agree with those kind of things, let's say we march on a city hall in your local riding. Well, why don't we do that, and why don't we demonstrate our frustration and exactly what our goal is, and let's make that loud and clear. I think, personally, we should be able to do that. It is our right to go out and do that, and if it were illegal, I would suggest doing it even stronger. Shouldn't be afraid of being arrested if they call for the authorities for trespassing on public property, which we actually have a right to do as Canadians. We have the right to do as we want in this country. Without the harming of other people, and that's a libertarian promise, and that's a promise in our foundation of Canada as a whole. So, in bringing up the Constitution, bring up all the matters that we have in terms of that. Go out and demonstrate at the bureaucracy offices where it's being not reported by any news station. Get as many interviews as you possibly can with the media on your opinion. So, thank you for that question. It's a great one, Tim.
Awesome, thank you, Lauren. All right, and we're moving on to Golok. Golok, let me pull up that question again. Trevor asks, and I do, what is your vision and strategy for the growth of the Libertarian Party? Where do you see the party in 5 years under your leadership?
Well, I rather like this question because I would like to encourage candidates to go to their freedom rallies and stuff like that, and I would like to see a Western. I'm probably repeat myself at this point. I would like to see a Western strategy that focuses on non-marginal constituencies to build up our brand and our beliefs in this world, and we can make a huge impact that way. I would like to see a bottom up way of doing this. I think it would be it's a lot better if even if a bunch of candidates like in one town go together to a freedom rally and hand things out, that's great. I convinced the BC Libertarian Party to go to the freedom rally in October, and ever since after that point, we're making record donations. So that was an effective strategy. So we do need the the grassroots candidates to speak to the people they're running with, to impress upon them the need for liberty. We need them at events that are nearby. We need the leader to even show up to these events when he can. But I would see some growth. I'm not sure how much growth we would see in 5 years, but I would like to think that we would at least make some of these landslides marginal constituencies, or we'll actually win a few seats in the West, and from there on, we'll probably grow into a superb opposition party, since we're pretty much the only opposition party.
Right on. All right. Thank you, Golok, for that answer. And one more guy here to answer the question, and that is Brandon Kirby. Brandon, what's your vision and strategy for the growth of the Libertarian Party? Where do you see the party in 5 years under your leadership? 2 minutes starting now, sir.
Golok, it would also be nice to see some seats won in the East as well. But what I would say is libertarianism right now, I'm going to have to sound super offensive to people, including myself. I would be offended if I heard someone like myself. I wouldn't even belong to a club that would have me as a member, the old Simpsons tribe. Libertarianism has become idiots on the internet with opinions. I am myself an idiot on the internet with an opinion. What I would like to see is an executional component to everything that we do. If you have an opinion on the collapse of the Canadian dollar, that's great. Show me what you've done with this knowledge that you have. If you have an opinion on vaccines, whatever, show me what you've done with that knowledge. The collapse of the Canadian dollar. Okay, so have you invested in cryptocurrency or commodities? So we want to talk about sound money. This cannot be some ideological airy-fairy out there 50 years from now if we get a majority government. What are you doing right now today? Is there an executional component to what you've done? Is there a pragmatic outcome to that? There was somebody who asked me, okay, what's the libertarian position on roads? And I was like, shit, I don't know anything about roads. So I was looking for an article. Unfortunately, I was not able to find one, but somebody had responded to the question who was themselves a civil worker, and they were talking about all the patronage and the wastage because of government contracts and all the corruption. And they're saying this is what it would look like in a okay, that's somebody that actually knows what they're talking about. I want to see more Tim Mowens talking about healthcare or how we combat out of control fires, unless Brandon Kirby's talking about it. I want to see people with the executional component, and I want to move the Libertarian Party into talking about this is how this impacts your day-to-day life, and this is how we've succeeded in doing it in our own lives.
Beautiful. Thank you, Brandon. All right, we're going to move on to audience questions now. And in order to get through as many as possible, I'm going to ask candidates to try to answer the question within 30 seconds or so. I'm going to cut you off after a minute, but if you can answer these questions in about 30 seconds, we'll try to do them relatively rapid fire to get through as many as possible here. And I think some of these questions you might be able to answer in one sentence or so. But here's the first one. There's two questions on guns I saw. One is from Lily Noir, who says, how will you represent gun owners in Canada? And then there was another one from Stuart Passmore. What is your position on open carry? So I think we can tackle those in one go here. And I'm going to start with Jacques Boudreau. Jacques, how would you answer that question? How will you represent gun owners, and what's your position on open carry?
Well, I support open carry. In the 2019 election, I remember two events where I pointed out to the women in the audience that guns were the great equalizer. I myself, 6'2", 205 pounds. and a woman with a gun could stop me if I wanted to do something on bad to them. And it's a testimony, I think, to the discourse in this country that I actually saw the light go on. When I said that to them, because I obviously they had never heard that argument before, and I mean, I went away thinking, well, I might just have made some converts here, because these women was like, hey, no, you're right. If I had a gun, I could defend myself. So I fully support it, and I would make that, that message. I bring a message to the people in terms of defending gun owners.
Beautiful. Thank you, Jacques. All right, Lauren, on to you. How would you represent gun owners, and what's your position on open carry, sir?
Great question, and this is one that I've had unilaterally throughout most of my life. Always pro-gun, always pro-open carry. We don't need to look at an example of this country and that country and any of these practices. We don't have to go out and see if it worked. We just have to see if it's a thing of is it a practical practice to begin with. And yes, I do support open carry. Yes, I do support your ability to hunt and defend your home. When I don't believe in gun buybacks, I don't believe in gun confiscation. When you look at the history of it, all the totalitarian states, it took decades to take out people's guns, and as soon as it did, unequivocally, there was dictatorships. And we're seeing it now in a lot of the countries that used to be free 50, 40, even 10 years ago, that were more free than they are today, Canada included. You look at it, all these authoritarian states did this, and we ended up with tens of millions dead. I'm for it unequivocally.
All right. Yeah, I mean, this is a pretty easy question, I think, for libertarians, but we want to hear him say it anyways. All right, Golok, you got 1 minute, 30 seconds, ideally. How will you defend gun owners, and what's your position on open carry?
Well, I don't care how you carry. You have a right to, in my opinion. I did a video on this recently. You can search my name. You'll probably find it. I want to get rid of the Firearms Act. I want to enforce your right to personal security. It doesn't say government security in that charter of theirs. They claim they supports the government supports personal security. We have to make sure there is no room for any type of gun control, and no buts as well. We got to stop with. I do not support any of this. What do you call it? I forget the word because I don't even use it. Yeah, stop gun control.
All right. Audience, by the way, audience, if you are just joining us, you can submit questions on our Facebook page. Go to the Libertarian Party of Canada Facebook page and watch the stream there, and you can ask questions under there. We're also broadcasting on YouTube, on my YouTube channel, The Liberty Experts, and you can ask questions there as well. So we're going to move on to Brandon. Brandon, how are you going to support gun owners? What's your position on open carry?
Well, I want to
concealed carry, for that matter.
Well, they're much the same. I want to theft Golak and Jacques' answer to this. Jacques was saying, well, we have to appeal to the SJW crowd, and that's entirely correct. It's great equalizer for women. I have a lot of Black friends, especially in America. Part of being libertarian, where we're breaking story after story, where they're just too afraid to call the police for good reason. Same thing with Indigenous people here in Canada. You talk about the impact on women or Jewish people who have been abused by Nazis, and they do not want to disarm themselves, and that makes sense. And I want to communicate to people who don't necessarily agree with us. That's part of the strategy question from before. In terms of the practicality of it, I want to completely repeal Section 91 and 92 of the Criminal Code. Those are the parts of the Criminal Code that we have to see gone. We have to take a look at the legislative procedure to abolish those. Thank you.
Thanks, Brandon. All right. Darcy Giroux, how we support gun owners, and what's your position on open carry?
Well, every one of these guys has pretty much answered this for me already. I will say, in the same way that a person has the right to ownership of themselves, they have the right to defend themselves. It's a right of property to own whatever you like, as long as you're not using it to aggress on anyone else. So yeah, absolutely own all the guns you want. I will support you 100%. Thanks.
All right, thanks, Darcy. Short and sweet. I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, I'll tell a quick story here that I thought was kind of funny. I was once doing some film work in a First Nations community, and my filming partner noticed that there was a gun leaning against the kitchen wall, and he asked the old timer that lived in the house. He's like, "Yeah, you know that's being stored illegally right now. It has to be in a lockbox." And the guy goes, "What? Really? It has to be in a lockbox? How would my neighbor come and borrow my gun if he needed it?" And I thought that was kind of a beautiful sentiment, you know, the amount of trust in the community where you can have your doors unlocked and have your guns out just in case your neighbor wants to borrow it. All right. I think that was everyone for that question. Let's move on to another question here. And again, folks, if you have a question, please drop it in the box here. Okay, here's an interesting question from Tyrell Robinson. And we're going to go to Lauren Warner first. Tyrell asks, who are your role models? And, you know, don't use me, guys. Stop kissing my ass here. I'm going out. You're the new generation. So who are your role models that aren't Tim Moen? All right. Lauren. Go.
Well, if it's not Tim Moen, I definitely would say Milton Friedman is one of them. My father is definitely also another one of them. He taught me a lot that I now know. And, you know, the more you read, the less you know and the more you want to read. Right. So I learned that principle. Milton Friedman is definitely one of my role models. My father and the founding fathers of the United States are also my role models. I wouldn't say really that, you know, Thomas Sowell, Jordan Peterson, these are the kind of people that we'd love to have those conversations with and love hearing their conversations. So those are my kind of role models. And yeah, Tim, you're definitely on it, but not kissing ass.
There it is. All right. Thanks, Lauren. All right. We're moving on to Goluk. Goluk, who are your role models, Tyra?
I got a shelf full of them over there. I would say Voltaire, Bastiat. I'll say Larry Sharp. I mean, he's done great things for the liberty movement. I mean, he actually got New York on the ballot. Joe got him off, but nonetheless, Sharp did great things. I look forward to seeing him do great things again. John Stossel, got to give props to John Stossel. He's an unsung hero right now in this liberty thing with, you know, people being deluged by Tim Pool and stuff like that. There are so many. Locke. I probably could run my time on this. Thanks very much.
All right. Thanks, Goluk. All right, Brandon. Tyrell wants to know who your role models.
Well, Goluk gave a shout out to my buddy Larry Sharp and at Being Libertarian. So thank you. I appreciate that. My own personal role models, I have to say King Solomon, filthy rich, hard drinking playboy who was a philosopher, a historian, a poet, a diplomat, a leader, an economist. King Solomon would be very high up on the list for people that I admire. In terms of Canadian role models, you have to be taking a look at Wilfrid Laurier. He had the greatest reduction of poverty, which is my big thing. How do we reduce poverty? Wilfrid Laurier had the greatest reduction of poverty while reducing government spending. He didn't get us involved in too many stupid, pointless forever wars. So I like Wilfrid Laurier from a Canadian perspective, but from a historical perspective, I'm Solomonic in the extreme. I love the Book of Ecclesiastes. Great question.
All right. Thanks, Brandon. And we're moving on to Darcy. Darcy, who are your role models?
Well, I always considered myself one of Tim Moen's role models, but for me, I definitely come from the Misesian tradition, the Enlightenment thinkers, you know, John Locke and the classical liberals, all the way through the great Austrian economists from, you know, Bombewerk and Mises, and, you know, finally Murray Rothbard. Of course, I would say he's probably, you know, in his strategy for liberty and his Anatomy of the State, Power and Market. Those are definitely the most influential things that I've read on libertarianism.
All right, thank you, Darcy. Okay, on to Jacques Boudreau. Jacques, who are your role models, sir?
Ron Paul and Bob Murphy. Going back to something I said before, we are perceived as being on the fringe. I think it's absolutely essential that we project a professional, well thought out image. Again, I've had some experiences at the OLP where we had people on the board who were completely unhinged and conveyed a terrible, terrible image of the party to the people out there. We cannot act in a way that's going to confirm the people. I mean, these would be incorrect beliefs on their part, but we cannot confirm them by acting in an unhinged fashion. And what I really like about Ron Paul and Bob Murphy is that they get the message across in a professional, respectful, well thought out way. I think Ron Paul's contribution has been immense, and it's in big part to the image that he projects. Thanks.
All right, thank you. All right, let's see here. I'm just going through some of these questions. A lot of interesting questions there. I hope we have a chance to get to most of them at least. Here's one from Donald Jeffcoat. Since the beginning of Canada, we've seen systemic racism to a variety of groups: Japanese, Italians, Indigenous, and others. Currently, we still have Indigenous management system in place. How, under your leadership, will you bring awareness that we need to embrace different cultures? If you were in the PM office, what would you like to see done to ensure racism is ended and prevented from recurring? And I think we started with Lauren last time. So we're moving on to Golok. Golok, what are you going to do about racism, sir?
Well, there's two different things. He's talking about systemic, which means government, I would guess. Systems. The government is a system. Collectivism is a system. So, I mean, what would you do? Well, you shrink government. You get rid of government. The more government you remove, the less system you have, the less racism you have. You get rid of the Indian Act. You get rid of all that crown land and start giving it to some Native Americans who might have a dream for it. Maybe they even want to rent it out to someone else who wants to use it. Who knows? But I mean, and then we can go down to property rights, and we can defend their property rights, and we can defend the right to defend that with a gun. We can do all that sort of thing. We can fight for their right to defend it with their speech, and all that jazz. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Golok. Moving on to Brandon. Brandon, what are you going to do about systemic racism in Canada? Don Jeffcoat wants to know.
Well, I want to theft a little bit about Golok's answer and address some of the systemic part where we libertarians, both in the United States where they're really having a problem with the police force, and also in Canada, in New Brunswick, where we're having issues with the RCMP, where there seems to be the unjust use of violence against Indigenous people. So let's end the systemic part and let's start addressing some of the racism that's existed and how quickly people who are government officials are using their weapons. Also, I really want to say that we have to be adopting some of the principles of what Theo Wilson was talking about in a TED talk that he gave. He was a black man who infiltrated the KKK, and he learned how to talk to people who are in the KKK. And okay, this is what's infuriating you. This is how we address it. This is how we take you out of this movement. And free speech is key to that. People being able to air their grievances and having civil conversations. Sorry for going over my time.
No worries, Brandon. All right, Darcy, Donald Jeffcoat wants to know basically how are you going to deal with racism, by the looks of it, systemic racism, particularly. You have a minute, sir.
Yeah, well, nothing does more to advance civil equality than the free market. So, removing barriers to entry, removing regulations, removing the systemic part of these things, definitely abolishing the Indian Act. I think every one of us is going to say that, especially in Canada. That's where we see it most. And then entrenching property rights into the Constitution. That's the second part of this. Without those property rights and the government recognizing that individuals have the right to that property, we're not going to get much further with any of this stuff. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Darcy. Moving on to Jacques Boudreau. Jacques, how would you deal with racism in the Prime Minister's office?
Right. Again, drawing from past campaigns, I pointed out, I think we're now running at something like 14 formal apologies by different prime ministers. And I pointed out to people that 12 of them were gross violation of the non-aggression principle. And many of them, were act of racism. So I think if we could drill into people's head the application of the non-aggression principle, I think a lot of it, well, certainly the systemic component, the rules and regulations would go away immediately. Now, at the individual level, I'm not naive. I think there will always be racist people. But I happen to think that it's a minority. And if we call them out every time it happens, again, we're not going to do away with it, but we can do away with the systemic component very quickly. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Jacques. And finally, we'll move on to Lauren. Lauren, how would you deal with racism as Prime Minister?
Yeah, thanks. It's an excellent question. Look, on an individual level, it is a very minor thing by comparison, whereas individuals are becoming less and less, more and more tolerant and accepting of people's skin color and culture. The government exceeds its racism every single time with getting rid of property rights and so forth. So look, if you were to look at some of the indigenous tribes in America, how well are they doing? Some of them are doing really actually great. There's the Lumbees that John Stossel actually reported a number of years ago, and they have title deeds. Why aren't we giving title deeds to and experimenting that with tribes? Why is our government going over and saying, well, this is Crown land, you have your right, but it's like, no, they should just have their land rights like everyone else, because right now that's a discrimination that they're doing. So how do we pull that? We get rid of a lot of these government bureaucracies and get rid of welfare systems that further impoverish people. Personal responsibility. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Lauren. Okay, let's go to our next question here. This one's from old Josh Steffler out there on Vancouver Island. Josh is a fixture of the Libertarian Party and the Libertarian movement, and doing a lot of good work out there on the island. And he's also, rumor has it, might even be a Sasquatch on the side. But Josh asks, what role do fringe and conspiracy theory toting libertarians have in the party if you are in charge? And I think Josh might have a vested interest in this question because, I think he comes at it from that angle as well. So what are you going to say to Josh and his 9/11 truth activism out there on Vancouver Island? We'll start with Brandon. Let me add him to the stream here. Brandon, go ahead.
Well, I think a lot of this comes down to an executional component of the party. And I'm going to say this 1,000 times. And if I didn't say it 1,000 times, I haven't said it enough. To what extent do you have command over the issue where there's an opinion? So if you want to have a conversation, I'll use, we've only got a minute, but I'll use young earth creationism. A lot of people use great arguments to promote it. I love young earth creationism. I don't believe in it, but my cousin uses a model whereby she actually goes out and she says, okay, well, here's this geological model that I use where this organic material has been cooking under this much pressure for 20 million years, completely at odds with young earth creationism. And she makes money with it. So if you want to tell me that you have this conspiracy about the Bank of Canada, that's great. Okay, what's your executional component? Have you made money with it? Do you have any professional credentials in this? And I think a lot of that tends to dissipate a lot of the conspiracy theories once we actually start taking a look at the executional component.
All right, thank you, Brandon. All right, we're moving on to Darcy. Darcy, how will you answer Josh's question? What role do fringe and conspiracy theory toting libertarians have in the party if you're in charge?
Well, I think first, given what we've seen, especially through these lockdowns and everything, I don't think it's as easy to discount so-called conspiracy theorists anymore, because during, from the beginning of the lockdown stuff, they have been right about more things than they have not been right about. To the extent that I am a big fan of conspiracy theories, I'm not, other than for entertainment purposes. But what I know to be true about these guys is that they correctly diagnose a problem in society a long time before the rest of us see it coming. Now, some of their things about how they got to that point are questionable. But I think these guys have a lot to say. There's kind of a sorry, again, going over, but you talk about a meta truth. You talk about things that are true in a larger sense. Sometimes the details aren't always right. These guys tend to get that meta truth right most of the time.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you, Darcy. All right, we're moving on to Jacques. Jacques, how would you deal with conspiracy-minded libertarians? What place do they have in the party?
Well, first thing I would say is the term conspiracy can often be used as a slur. People who don't like what you say will brand you some kind of conspiracist nut job. I'm driven by facts and logic. People who have opinions on certain things that are being done that are not necessarily in tune with mainstream, I would certainly listen to. In the end, I would be careful to make sure that what comes out officially out of the party has been vetted internally. Of course, people are free to express themselves and to present themselves as libertarians with a certain viewpoint, but in the odd cases where the message again would not make us look particularly well reasoned, I would want to make sure that that does not come out as an official statement from the party.
All right, thank you, Jacques. All right, and we're moving on to Lauren. Lauren, how would you deal with what place would the conspiracy-minded sort of fringe, and I use that in quotation marks, I'm not using it to deride people here, I'm using Josh's words, and he wants to know that. What place does Josh have in the party?
Right, and that's an excellent question. Where do you see yourself in the party? Do you see yourself as identifying as libertarian? If so, great. Again, we can disagree with a whole number of things as long as we are following the message that liberty throughout history has been followed. Look, personally, I know there's a lot of people who are against vaccines. I am for them. I'm just not for the government going out and mandating it. If you want to take the vaccine, that's your body, your choice. It's the same thing with drugs. If you want to go out and do the drugs that you want to do, go out and do them. Right? A lot of these conspiracies are really just, slurs, as it was mentioned before. So in terms of that, we need to listen to less Alex Jones, and we need to hear more Edward Snowden's, and we need to hear more Julian Assange's, right? It doesn't matter where they may align. The fact is those are the things that are really pressing, and those are concrete evidences, not just talking about, well, this thing's going to kill you and that. You take your own responsibility and you choose for yourself, and where the party should go from that, it needs to be concrete evidence without unequivocally before announcing it.
Great, thanks, Lauren. Okay, moving on to Golak. Golak, what place do people like Josh have in the party from your perspective?
Well, Josh is a great member. He's very helpful libertarian out there. I mean, I would hate to be without him. You know, I don't necessarily know if they're chemtrails. I see them as jet streams, but if he believes in chemtrails, I don't care. I mean, here's the thing. I mean, we're libertarians. If CSIS is sending out jet streams that are chemtrails or whatever, it doesn't matter. We're getting rid of CSIS. We got to get rid of CSIS. We got to ban espionage. It doesn't matter. And they admit espionage exists. So, I mean, it's not even a theory. It's government is a conspiracy against the individual. So, I mean, let's just fight it together, man.
All right. Thank you, Golok. All right. And now we got another question. There's a couple of comments and questions along this line here. Shannon Scott says the Libertarian Party needs to come out hard on the biggest issue of the day. No more COVID policy mandates to demonstrate we are the party of free choice across the board, pro-choice on vaccines, masks, opening your business, or even leaving your house. I completely agree with Shannon there. But here's the question from Mason. Mason asks, what are your thoughts on the Great Reset and digital vaccine passports tied into your smartphone, which could also be tied to your biometric ID, which could also be tied to your central bank digital currency? And we're going to start with Darcy. I believe it's his turn. Darcy, your thoughts on the Great Reset and all these government threats, I guess, about digital ID and biometric ID and digital currency?
I am against that. Thank you.
Thank you, Darcy. Jacques, your thoughts on the Great Reset, digital vaccine passports tied to your smartphone, tied to your central currency, all that kind of thing. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I strongly oppose all of those. I think that people like Klaus Schwab are very, very scary people. And I think that we have to push back as hard as we can against this type of control. I mean, all of this, again, is central planning, which has such a poor record that only an academic could defend it, as Tom Sowell said. That's it. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you, Jacques. Yeah, I had a feeling a lot of these questions wouldn't take very long to answer. You know, it's kind of right there in our name, what we stand for, and I expect all candidates basically will stand for, you know, the basic tenets of liberty. So, all right, we're going to Lauren. Lauren, Great Reset, digital vaccine passports, biometric ID tied to your central bank. What are your thoughts?
Well, thank you for the question. And look, this has come up within my own inner circle of friends and what they thought, and everyone is unequivocally opposed to it. So I'm also opposed to it. I'm opposed to centralization in general in terms of government bureaucracy. So I'm opposed to it wholeheartedly, and I'm pretty sure everyone else is here too. Thank you.
All right. Moving on to Golok. Golok, are you in favor of these digital IDs and passports and central bank things?
No, it's all a bunch of authoritarian crap. So I mean, no Great Reset. I mean, let's say they had a Great Reset and they said, well, it's liberty for all. Maybe you would, but that's not what they're saying. I mean, it's I got the book there. It's even painful to read. It's terribly written. But none of these passports. I don't want the regular passport. Actually, I want to get rid of the regular passport. I mean, we got IDs with chips in them that you can slide across a reader. I don't know why the hell we need a damn passport to go to Hungary or America or whatever. It's ridiculous. I mean, we need to roll back government.
All right. And we're moving on to Brandon. Brandon?
Well, you skipped me for being the first to answer again, Moen. I'm chopped liver over here to you.
Oh man, oops. Sorry, I'm trying not to pick on you. I'm sensitive about picking on you. I think that's why I missed you.
It's because I'm from the East and you're from the West. All right, let's have some fun here. My views on COVID-19, the government's response and our own personal response alienates everybody. I piss off everyone with this because I believe in something where we have personal responsibility plus freedoms. And that's the definition of liberty, as you so correctly say. And a lot of people that I encounter are really, really good on one or the other. They're really good on personal responsibility, where they wear the PPE, where they practice hygiene. Or conversely, they then go on to just say, you know what, you don't have the right of freedom of assembly or the freedom to travel. And then I encounter some people who say you have the right to freedom of assembly, you have your charter rights and freedoms, but I'm not going to practice any personal responsibility for it. I think you need both. You take the models like countries of Hong Kong, Taiwan, Japan. There are countries where people are saying, I'm going to be personally responsible for combating this virus and the spread of this virus, but I don't want government involvement. I think personal responsibility, when that takes effect, you really stall the impact of the virus.
All right. Thank you, Brandon. Okay. I think we have time. I'm going to try to wrap this up by 3 if we can. And I'm going to do one more question here from the audience, and then we're going to move on to kind of closing statements. And I think, the COVID is coming up quite a bit in the questions. There's one from David. What is your overall position on the COVID situation? There's a specific question from Neeraj about having debates about, whether businesses have the right to require masks and deny service and that sort of thing. So let's go with, I'm going to give you guys a minute or so here. Talk about your general, what would a libertarian approach to dealing with COVID be? And what do you think about this idea that businesses can deny your right based on not following their masking rules or something like that? Let's get your thoughts. We're going to start with Jacques here. Jacques, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, first of all, quickly on COVID, I recently finished reviewing a 50-page document that itself had reviewed 80 or so studies, and the outcome is very, very clear. Lockdowns don't work on balance, and that's the key part. This is something that governments don't do. They don't take a holistic view of things, but on balance, the lockdowns have done far more harm than good. And I don't have the time to go into this, but there's all kinds of aspects where we have suffered a great deal. That's number one. Now, on businesses, of course, I believe in private property rights, and businesses can set whatever rules they want. Where this gets very, very touchy and possibly complicated is when businesses start acting on behalf of the government, because the government sometimes has hinted that the life of the business in question could be made very, very difficult if they don't implement some government mandate. And that's completely wrong. So this is where, is this truly the will of the company, or is this coming from the government? And I don't have an easy answer to this, but it's the type of thing that we would have to get involved in.
All right. Thank you, Jacques. All right, let's move on to Lauren. Lauren, how would you deal with the COVID pandemic from a libertarian perspective? What are your thoughts on businesses denying service because people aren't masking up and getting vaccines and different things?
It's a great question, and a very difficult one at that. We are dealing with a pandemic, whether people want to realize the gravity of it. Look, in terms of the health, if public health administrators wanted to come into it, fine. As far as government and government-funded public health, I'm not for it. It's I'm not for forcing a business or forcing another human being into a thing that they don't consent to. So if a business wants to do that, by all means, then that's up to the business to do. However, most businesses do not want to do this, from what it seems, and I could totally be wrong on that percentage, right? But it comes down to personal choice. It's the same thing with everything else that comes into life. You are taking the risk. You are trying to set your own personal example and who you want to be around with. These are all risk factors. let things, let people govern themselves. Let businesses do the same thing. So, thank you.
All right, thanks, Lauren. All right, moving on to Golok. Golok, how do you deal with pandemic? And what are your thoughts on businesses denying service, or some might call it discriminating based on, not wearing a mask and not having vaccines and different things like that?
Well, you could say that the mask does cause a person harm because they're forced to ingest their own CO2, so that could be an aggressive move. That's maybe debatable among us. There's the fact that and lockdowns, of course, are wrong and all that. I've been at freedom rallies and stuff like that. The important thing is this whole private business thing, and that's a problem because right now, I mean, the government has been enforcing it and culturally ingraining it into us to the point where can it be a private policy? And also, a lot of businesses are forced to be tax collectors from their employees as sales tax. We got to deal with the tax system before we even talk about my private company. And that's the same thing with stock trades. I mean, public securities aren't quite private businesses. So there are a lot of areas where.
All right. Thank you, Golok. Moving on to Brandon. Brandon, what are your thoughts on dealing with the pandemic? How would a libertarian, or how would you as a libertarian deal with COVID pandemic and deal with these businesses denying service?
Well, I'm sick and tired of people. On the internet with their opinions. What I want to deal with are executional components where people have successful models. Who's dealt successfully with the pandemic? So again, I'm going to double down on Japan, Hong Kong, and Taiwan, where they have a fraction of the deaths of COVID-19. And what have they done governmentally? Almost nothing. People took personal responsibility, and they were able to combat this. And I think this is something we have to view as a success of their models. When you take personal responsibility, I don't think you should, if a business says you have to wear a mask, well, that's the business's right to do so. That's their call. If you don't want to go on their private property, don't go on their private property. But when people take personal responsibility, great things happen. And it all comes down to freedom. It doesn't come down to government action. It doesn't come down to mandates.
All right. Thanks, Brandon. All right. Moving on to Darcy. Darcy, how are you going to deal with COVID pandemic? How are you going to deal with businesses shutting down, that sort of thing? What businesses, do you think businesses would even be shutting down right now if it hadn't been for all these mandates? Maybe, there you go. Give you a minute.
Sorry, I was muted there. So yeah, there has been no greater assault on our liberties in our lifetime than state-imposed lockdowns. As far as mask mandates, I mean, again, there should be no mandate on masks. The problem is that it has become a political issue, where a store owner might implement a mask obligation. They have that right, but mostly what we're seeing is it's done as a political statement. So that should be off the table, because the government, left or right, should not have the authority to impose those types of laws. So where a mask obligation by a store owner is a political statement or a form of protest, that I would like to see that be unnecessary, because the government doesn't have the authority to make those types of laws. So there's no way for anybody to lobby them to make that law.
All right. Thank you, Darcy. All right. We're coming up on getting close to 3 here, and there are a lot of questions. I'm sorry I couldn't get to all your questions. But I think we're going to move on to our closing statements here from our candidates. I think we're at Lauren, so we'll start with Lauren and end with Jacques for these closing statements. And you'll have 2 minutes to do your closing statements, candidates. And for those of you who want a little bit more time after the formal debate, just to have a discussion, maybe I'll stick around just because I know there's a lot of questions out there. Stick around for a few minutes afterwards and see what happens. And candidates are welcome to join. You know, part of first of all, I'd like to thank the candidates for being very polite and articulate and bearing with technical difficulties and me being kind of a clumsy moderator. It's been tempting for me to want to jump in and answer these questions too, and I have to switch gears now because I'm in opening a different chapter in my life. So it's great to hear that the Libertarian Party, whoever becomes leader, is going to be in great hands. All you are great candidates, and it really warms my heart to see this. So, all right, we're going to start with Lauren. Lauren, go ahead and give us your 2-minute closing.
Thank you, Tim, and thank you for this discussion. It's been very healthy. It's been a positive one. Look, in voting for me, whether you agree with everything that I've said or not, I have the experience to advertise and branch out through social media and in person, and being able to connect with communities. Does not matter what somebody's skin color is, does not matter what somebody's culture is. There's always going to be something that we can ground ourselves in and involve every Canadian taxpayer and every Canadian tax evader, by the government standard anyway, to bring in this great culture of liberty that we used to know in Canada to a much more extent than we do today. We need to teach people that it actually puts a drag on our system to be on the government, on the government's paycheck. When if you have 2 arms, 2 legs, you know, and you're not there's nothing wrong with you, and you're just on welfare because of depression, anxiety. It's like, okay, look, your personal choice if you want to, but it is my choice to say where that money goes to, right? I don't want a single person paying in for someone else when that person can help themselves. That's what it comes down to, is we want fairness and we want responsibility. And how do we implement that? We show it in practice. I have really good in practice so far, as far, and I'm not downplaying anyone else's credentials or any of that, but voting for me will definitely help rush in a way that we can take out certain aspects of government legislation and bring back in our gun rights and bring back in our property rights. These are and having the freedom to say what you want and being able to counter protest the things that you don't like, and letting the people who shout the loudest have the floor so that we can tell them that their ideas are wrong and this is why ours are correct. So thank you. And thank you, Tim, again for your service in 7 years.
Thank you so much, Lauren. All right, we're moving on to Golok. Golok, you have 2 minutes to do your closing statement starting.
Oh, I ran in Vancouver East, a very tough constituency that's traditionally NDP, and I was barely. I went to the last day to get signatures on a bad leg in pain, and I complained about it endlessly. I don't deny that, but I did this alone, and then I got the second most votes of any Libertarian in the last election. I got a standing ovation in the Carnegie Center, which is claimed to be a very socialist place. I have shown a lot of leadership in my own constituency. I have a strong record on fighting for the liberties. I even improved on my percentage provincially. I'm not sure what that matters, but I trust the individual wholeheartedly and hope that we can create a government that just governs what little of it is left of itself and not other people. I'd like us to move eastward from the west in a strong strategy. And thanks very much for listening. And check out my website, eastvancouverlibertarian.com. I'm sure it's okay now. Thanks very much.
All right, thanks, Golok. Yeah, shameless self-promotion is more than welcome here. Eastvancouver.com, check it out. Eastvancouverlibertarian.com, is it?
East Van Libertarian.
East Van Libertarian. Okay. Thanks, Golok. All right, and we're moving on to Brandon Kirby. Brandon, you got 2 minutes to make your closing sales pitch starting.
Well, I'm moving straight into the same shameless self-promotion. That would be beinglibertarian.com, but Being Libertarian Canada would be where you could check out some more of these views. Somebody had asked the question, I apologize, I don't know your name, but 101 Rockhound said, did Brandon just say he's sick and tired of people and their opinions? Yes. The answer to that question is 100% yes. I am sick and tired of hearing people who don't know what they're talking about giving me their internet arguments. What I want to do is transition the Libertarian Party away from online internet debates, which accomplish nothing except for, raise people's emotions rather. What I would like to see instead is somebody coming along and saying, this is what I've accomplished in this field. Commodities trading, cryptocurrency trading. You want to talk about the collapse of the Canadian dollar? You want to talk about taxation being theft? Okay, so what have you actually done to minimize this? Do you have anything on your resume that suggests you could accomplish this well in office? You have Justin Trudeau saying, oh, well, I want to completely rewrite X, Y, and Z with democratic policy. Okay, but there's nothing on your resume that suggests you can do this. You have Chrystia Freeland. We have a minister in cabinet that has no background in finance dictating our policy on finance. What I want to know is what your background is, what your resume is, and this tells me a great deal about what you could accomplish in office. I want to know the executional component. You've done X, can you do Y? Is there anything on your resume that says that you can do this? I totally agree with the libertarian ideology, but I want to know how it can be brought into fruition.
All right. Thank you, Brandon. All about execution for Brandon. Thank you, sir. All right. We're moving over to Darcy to give his final 2 minutes, and he's unmuted. So go ahead. 2 minutes starting now, Darcy.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank all the other candidates. You are all guys that I have respect for, and I do sincerely look forward to working with all of you. In what capacity, we'll find out after the convention. It's not easy advocating for liberty in Canada. The topics of our conversation here is proof of that. Anyone who tells you today that there is an easy short-term path to political success for us is out of touch with reality. It's not going to be easy, and it does take a personal toll on anyone involved. But that doesn't mean it's not worth fighting for, and it doesn't mean that you're wrong. So, specifically to our members, no matter how many of your friends and family, might criticize you, that little voice in the back of your head that's been telling you that there is something wrong with the system and, with the direction that Canada is going, that the economy is not good, that families are worse off, that little voice will be proven right. And there will be a window for us to make a difference. And until then, what we need to do is have consistent, foundational, principled messaging coming from our party, and just stand in that place until, obviously do the legwork like Brandon and Golok were talking about. Obviously get out there and do things, in our communities on a local level, get off the internet, start showing people that, us libertarians are, not just people who argue on the internet. And there will be a window for us to make a difference. There will be a window for us to capitalize in the bigger game. Right now, we're rebuilding a hockey team. We have to get back to fundamentals and build a good foundation for our party. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Darcy. All right, and finally, we are on to Jacques Boudreau. Jacques, you have 10 minutes to give your closing statement starting now.
You mean 2 minutes, not 10.
Yeah, sorry, Jacques. Not unfairly advantaging you here. 2 minutes to Jacques. I'm sure if I gave you 30 minutes, you'd take it. But you got 2 minutes, Jacques, for your closing pitch.
All right, thank you. Well, to expand on my opening statements, Tim had put out a series of things that I think he wanted the future leader to meet. One made me laugh, which was that he wanted the future leader to hate the state. Well, I want to state unequivocally that I do hate the state. Number two, I hinted to this, but I am recently retired, so in terms of availability of time, I will have plenty to use. I'm quite willing to travel and again to be interviewed as much as possible to try to advance our cause. I would add that every year that goes by, every piece of reading that I do on libertarianism convinces me more and more that we are the right party. And, you know, I look at the quality of the other people running today. I once acted, well, several times as an expert witness in Ottawa, and it is a scary, scary world. Most MPs are so poorly read. They understand nothing. They vote without understanding what they're voting on. It's appalling. And, you know, the debate today has proven to me once again that libertarians are far better informed and read than our opponents. And I want to take the long-term view here. We are planting seeds. We are telling people what is going to happen. It's going to be bad. But when it does happen, you know, we will be on record for saying why it was going to happen. And I think that, you know, if we take the long-term view, will serve us well, because at some point people will say, you know, rotating between the Conservatives, the Liberals, the NDP is just not going to do it, because it's going to be more of the same. And I think when it does happen, we'll be there to point to our record, and it will serve us well. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jacques. And again, thank you to all candidates. I'm going to keep you guys here in the back room for a second here, and we'll go live, maybe just have a quick kind of group discussion with everyone involved. But I just want to close once again thanking all the candidates for their participation here and for stepping up to the plate. It's not a trivial thing to put your name forward for something like this. You know, you're taking on quite a responsibility, and I'd like to remind our listening audience that you're not going to find too many other parties out there that have this process, or at least not these new upstart parties like the PPC and the True North Party. You know, these parties have leaders for life. We, you know, have a membership elected leader who will be representing the membership and will be accountable to membership and will be removed from office if members don't like what they're doing. So these guys are fully accountable to you, the members. And and on that note, I'd just like to say, look, there are lots of positions and opportunities in this party. If you want to be involved with this party, there are going to be board positions up for grabs. There's going to be regional board positions where you represent your region, whether it's BC or Manitoba or Quebec or whatever, where you can represent, you know, and have your voice in the party and how it's being governed and led. So there's plenty of opportunities outside of leader, you know, that in this party. And so if you're listening to this and you're maybe feeling a little inspired, look, there's lots of opportunity for you to put your principle and your beliefs into action. And if you take them seriously, join the party and get involved with what we're doing here. And I'll tell you this, that even though I'm stepping back from being leader, this is my party. I'm a libertarian, and I'll be a libertarian for life. And I'll be a supporter of whoever the next leader is, and of this Libertarian Party. And from what I've seen, we've got some high quality candidates here. You know, I have had the privilege of moderating a leadership debate for presidential candidates in the U.S. Libertarian Party, and there were some sketchy dudes on that dais. I'm not going to lie to you. We don't have any of those here today, so I'm very happy about that. We've got some great people, so I'm feeling pretty good and pretty confident about stepping away from this party. I think it might be a good thing for this party to get some fresh energy in there, and I'm loving what I'm seeing, and whoever wins is going to have my support. So thank you guys once again. Go to libertarian.ca, join the party, make sure you are a member. Step up and fill in some of these roles and volunteer. And if you can, make it to convention. Go to our party website and you'll find out details about the convention. It's in Edmonton next weekend, August 14th and 15th, and we're going to have some great speakers and great times there. So I invite you to that. All right, I'm just going to bring all the candidates in here, and we can keep a discussion going there. So there's a few other questions here, guys, that we'll just kind of leave this open. The debate's over. This is just kind of a general discussion now. I'm just looking through some of the comments. And there was one here that struck me about the U.S. Libertarian Party and how we see our relationship. There it is. Canuckers. He said, would you do anything to either distance or align yourself with the direction of the U.S. LP, where a lot of the perception of the Canadian Libertarian Party is formed? And I think that's a great question. I'm not sure how I'd answer it. One of the things that as leader, I've been followed very closely USLP and see what works and what doesn't. So, you had your Gary Johnson and Bill Weld ticket. You had Joe Jorgensen in the last election. And Johnson and Weld were kind of this, they were very, they were pragmatic in the sense that here were some former Republican governors that had actually had some electoral success and governed states, but they were fairly milquetoast in terms of their messaging. And I thought, okay, well, is this the direction that we should be taking the party, or should we be taking a more radical approach? And now what I see emerging on the U.S. scene is the Mises caucus in the U.S. is really growing and gaining some steam with the likes of Tom Woods and Dave Smith, and I think Stephen Kinsella is supporting the Mises caucus. Some of these heavy-hitting, hardcore libertarians are joining up there. So I'm excited to see if that gains traction and to see the difference between these kind of more radical, like we're not wavering on principle at all, versus the Gary Johnson kind of soft approach. What do you guys think about this question that Canuckars is posing here?
Well, first of all, Dave Smith for president. But, I would have preferred to see Mons or Whitney be the presidential candidate, personally. There was some trouble in New Hampshire that they quashed, and the Mises was very good at that. And they made a good point on Instagram about being careful about woke infiltration, even in our own party. And I think if we follow that line of thinking, we might be safe. We also have to worry about, to some degree, conservatarians, I guess, would be the term. Because we don't want someone going, well, we like ending taxes, but we want gay illegal. We just don't need that stuff. But that's. But the Libertarian Party in the States is it's not really the national entity, really. It's the state parties, and each state party is different. You got the crazy stuff with the Tiger King in one state, and some of the happenings in New Hampshire, and then other states have a pretty smooth run of things. And they have got a lot of members who actually got elected too. So, there's a lot to learn from them too. The fact is, actually, I think the only state parties have actually elected anybody in libertarian circles. So we probably shouldn't distance ourselves too much.
Right. Anyone else have any thoughts on that question about aligning? And
yeah, I do. I don't really see it as necessary that we align ourselves with the United States Libertarian Party, because once again, it really comes down to the executional component to it. And like I said before, if I repeat myself 1,000 times, I have not yet repeated myself enough. So if you don't have an executional component to your libertarianism, the way Gary Johnson did, he actually reduced the size and scope of the government within his state, New Mexico. Was he a clown? Absolutely, he was a clown, but he was a successful clown. And I really do see the direction that we need to take this party is, okay, so what have you accomplished in your personal life? What have you accomplished in your professional life? And then let's go in that direction if it's a libertarian direction. If it's less government rather than more government, then that's fantastic. Let's do that sort of a thing. The same thing, Jo Jorgensen. Jo Jorgensen was head and shoulders above the other candidates who were running for president because she had built from scratch, not like Donald Trump, who inherited a multi-million dollar fortune and just built some real estate, which quite frankly, I have a real estate company too. It's the easiest thing in the world to do. It takes no talent, no skill. Jo Jorgensen used her PhD knowledge in psychology to build a marketing company. So there's an executional component where I said, okay, she actually knows how to build a business. This is fantastic. This is the direction that the Libertarian Party in Canada needs to take. We say, okay, so what have you actually done in your professional life? And let's move in that direction, because then we can actually say to Canadians, this is where you're hurting. This is where the government is actually taking money from you or hurting you environmentally or ethically or what have you. And this is where we're here to help. And this is where we've done it in and of ourselves. So
Yeah,
I like the executional component.
I think what I'm hearing you say, Brandon, is that people who are like have personal stories or expertise in a particular area where they can speak kind of I guess authoritatively about like I can talk about how government ruins healthcare and fire services pretty authoritatively because I know all the nuances and so when I have stories to tell that take these abstract principles and concretize them and show how actual people are getting harmed because of those policies. Would that be a fair kind of summation of what you're saying?
I think you hit the nail on the head. Don't give a damn about what Brandon Kirby has to say about private roads. Yeah. Ask a road construction expert. Ask a civil engineer. Yeah. Ask somebody that's actually worked in it. Don't.
We always used to say when someone.
Yeah, but if you did ask someone, don't you know? I mean, you learn from people. Doesn't necessarily, not being specifically in that job doesn't necessarily negate you from knowing something about the issue. It doesn't necessarily mean you have no common sense either.
That's a good point, Golak, but I want to reiterate what I was saying about young earth creationism, if you'll give me 2 minutes. I hear a lot of great arguments for young earth creationism, and I love them. I find it fascinating. I really do. I have nothing against young earth creationists, nothing at all. But when my cousin, who's a geologist who works with young earth creationist model, or who works with models that are incompatible with young earth creationism, to say, you know what, if you drill here, there's a 40% chance you're going to find oil, or if you mine here, there's a 90% chance you're going to find this mineral. That works. And I like that which works. I love people that can say, okay, here's what I know, but here's where I actually have some credentials. Here's the predictive capacity. Here's the scientific method where I'm going to actually make a prediction and it's going to pan out for reasons X, Y, and Z, for historical reasons X, Y, and Z. That's what I love. Then I say, okay, you actually probably know what you're talking about. When I say the Canadian dollar is going to collapse, what I mean to say is I've actually made a lot of money from commodities trading, or I've made a lot of money from cryptocurrency trading. I don't mean to say this hypothetical, theoretical, here's my internet opinion, here's my reasoning X, Y, and Z. What I mean to say is it's worked. And I think that adds an extra oomph. I think that adds a certain je ne sais quoi on top of the argument that is a confirmation that there's a success that a lot of Canadians can look at and say, oh, right, I get it. This could actually benefit me too.
I will say one of the things we did in 2015 was we reached out to subject matter experts and kind of gave them I can't remember what role we gave. We kind of gave them a formal title with the national campaign. You know, we had a First Nations guy who was, who lived on a First Nations community, who was our spokesperson on that. And we had like these different, and it does add there's definitely some benefit. I could see strategy doing that. But here's something else I want to get at, and I'll get some other people here talking about this. This is something I've been thinking about quite a bit. Ant says every libertarian I know is a former conservative. Most people became libertarian through the free market aspect, and then warm up to other aspects. Liberals need to be focused to grow the party. I'm guessing what he means is we need to focus more on liberals to grow the party. And I hear a lot of people kind of argue about this, like the U.S. Libertarian Party. I think Luke Thompson has said, they're horrendous, and one of their big criticisms is that they seem to pander to the left or something like that. They need to pander to the right a bit more, and they certainly have avoided big issues, right? Like they haven't been very strong on the lockdowns and the pandemic and stuff like that. At least the national messaging from the USLP. So I think they get some criticism rightly there. I think they maybe get some unfair criticism when Jorgensen made an anti-racist comment that was perceived as being pandering to the left and going along with this kind of socialist narrative. When you actually read the context she was quoted in, it was a speech that talked about all the racist policies that the U.S. government had that oppressed people because of their immutable characteristics. So it was a kind of an unfair criticism, but it brings up this larger point that Ant brings up. And one of the things I saw in my time as leader was this continual schism between what you might call people with left-wing sensibilities and people with right-wing sensibilities. So in other words, there are libertarians that have come to libertarianism from the left and libertarians that have come to libertarianism from the right, and they have like a slightly different focus. Like people that have come from the left are more focused on things like liberty enriches lives for poor people, and it creates robust economic growth, and so that there's the most marginalized people in society are looked after and different things like that, whereas people who come at it from the right are more focused maybe on property rights and guns or something like that, and maybe people on the left are like, yeah, we should have the right to do drugs, and I don't, they're like, so, but it seems like oil and water sometimes, having these two different groups. What are your guys' thoughts on I guess it goes to a bigger question of how do we unite libertarians? Because if there's one thing that's true, actually one of my questions was going to be this. Jonathan Haidt's personality research has shown that we libertarians, as we already know, our personalities are prone to be highly disagreeable and reactionary. And how will you unite this cantankerous lot as leader kind of thing? So I don't know, maybe some of you people who aren't Brandon and Goluk can kind of address that, talk about that a bit.
Yeah. So my take on it is what I've said throughout the discussion thus far is there needs to be that unity. If you want to go out and protest, you don't just have to be a party member. Again, a part of libertarianism is being a voluntarist, right? So having whoever you want, even if you may disagree with everything else, if they want to come in and show their support, welcome it, embrace them into it. This is why we're the opposition party, because every other officialized registered party in Canada in history has shown they only want their people, they want their core groups, and so they isolate themselves from the average person that would vote otherwise if they had that option. So allowing them to participate doesn't matter if every other thing they may disagree with libertarians or full-heartedly say, hey, we absolutely hate your guts, but we're going to agree here. That's the whole kind of function of the free market as well, and having a free market of opinions. It's like, well, people who would normally want to strangle each other have worked together. So that's my whole thing on it.
All right, thanks.
Sure, I'll chime in too. I mean, coalition building is an important aspect of being in a political party, and especially for us, where we need to actively seek out friends and sympathizers to our cause. And there may be, there may be times where you do have to hold your nose and work with somebody that you are ideologically separated from, and in politics, I think we do need to have that. We need to build bridges. We need to bring other people into the fold. We need to find common ground, because at the end of the day, the objective is liberty. So anything we can do to advance that cause, I'm up for working towards that and working with whoever it takes to make that happen. I am going to bow out for the afternoon, though. It's my oldest son's birthday. But I've really enjoyed this. Thanks a lot, guys. Good luck to everyone. I will see you all next weekend. Thanks. Bye.
Beautiful. Thanks, Darcy.
Have fun.
Jacques, how would you unite libertarians? One of the I'll give you an example of why this question is kind of near and dear to my heart. It's, one of my biggest mistakes or regrets, I guess, as party leader was, first of all, suspending Lauren Southern's campaign. I got bad information and thought that she was attacking our president personally, which turned out not to be the case. And then my second biggest regret was maybe bringing her back because, she had gone to Breitbart and kind of slammed the party in the meantime. But the whole Lauren Southern affair kind of highlights the stark divide we had in our party. I was getting all this pressure from people who were probably former leftists, who were, let's say, LGBTQ activists and were primarily concerned about how libertarian can address concerns that the left is typically concerned about, the marginalization of people, the oppression and discrimination. And obviously libertarianism has some great answers for that. I mean, if you're concerned about poor people, if you're concerned about the marginalized, we ought to have a libertarian society. So we have something that appeals to both the left and the right, I think. But those people were very much like oil and water with other people who were more property rights / gun owners, and came at it from that side. And so I find it very difficult to try to unite these two factions. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I said earlier about education, and I always make a point of thanking people who've invited me to debates, during the campaign, because certainly my first go around, I had a single invite, whereas in 2019 I had 7 of them. But I sometimes point out to them that it's really not to our advantage to be presented with, not unlike what we did today. And it's not like I don't understand why we do it this way, but to be given, a minute to answer complex questions does not do us well, in part because, or in large part, I should say, because we are far more knowledgeable again, right? Most of my opponents, at least here in London West, all they have are sound bites that they've been coached to say whenever they can, right? But if I could debate them for 2 hours, say on economics or the fiscal situation of the country, I would wipe the floor with them because they are completely ill-equipped to defend their position because they haven't got one, right? Again, it's a bunch of sound bites. So when I go into a debate and they say, "Oh, what would you do about the debt in 1 minute?" I was like, well, there's so much to be said. I have to distill this in a minute. So again, people who come from the left who are concerned about the dispossessed, and we have all kinds of solutions to this. It's just a matter of time to be able to demonstrate to them why they would be better off under a libertarian. Like you talked about LGBTQ. I have made the point that and most people don't know this, but the state had absolutely nothing to do with your marital status until the French Revolution. Like prior to that, the state recognized that this was a religious affair and that's none of our business. But during the French Revolution, of course, they wanted to replace the church and they got involved. But the point I was making to them is, from a libertarian point of view, I don't care at all. Like if you want to get married, find yourself an institution that will recognize your marriage and go ahead. But the state has no business with this. Right, and I have talked about how these people have suffered because some people in power thought they knew best, right? And it's a recurring problem. So give me a chance to explain to them why they suffered and how they would not have suffered under a libertarian government. And I think we can go a long ways.
can I build on Jacques' point, because that was a brilliant point, by the way.
Yeah, you can do whatever you want, Brandon. I'm not going to aggress against you.
All right, you got no idea what you just.
I might remove you from my property if you get too long-winded, though. So.
All right, here I go. No, but it was a brilliant point. I like the point, and really, what we need to be focusing on is exactly what he was saying, which is somebody asked me last night, and Tim, you know this, all of you, because I think you've run all as candidates before. When you're asking for the signatures, somebody said, okay, well, what's your point on social services? And I failed. To my failure, I probably should not admit that I had a failure in a leadership debate, but I did. Somebody said, what's your point on social services? I would love to take half an hour and say, this is where the Libertarian Party is on poverty reduction. Because I do believe we have independent metrics in India, in China, in the reverse direction with respect to Venezuela or Nicaragua, where you can take a look at the metrics of starvation or dehydration or infant mortality or lifespans, or even architecture, where you could have an earthquake in Haiti that kills 250,000 people and a stronger earthquake in the Cayman Islands that kills 0 people. What that has to do with capitalism. When you have a liberated economy, we reduce poverty. And I would love to be able to take half an hour of that person's time. And the key question is, can you boil your thought process on this down to 30 seconds? And you don't always have 30 seconds. As Jacques was saying, like sometimes it just doesn't work. And that I believe pedagogy, education, to be the key issue of libertarianism. Can we educate people and say, actually, you know what? If you're anti-poverty, you should be a libertarian. If you're pro-environment, you should be a libertarian. If you're pro X, Y, or Z, I believe we have the best answers. We have the best ideology to answer some of these questions. But the question is, can you boil it down to a 30-second soundbite? And sometimes that's not always all that easy to do. And that, I believe, to me, you know, if I were to become the leader, that would be my key challenge. Can I make these 30-second soundbite questions? Because that's all you have for attention span when somebody asks you the question.
Yeah, I remember at one debate or one forum, healthcare came up, and I gave what I thought was a fairly nuanced answer. It was a little milquetoasty. This was early in my foray as leader, and I talked about how I wanted to legalize healthcare, right? How I wanted to end prohibitions on healthcare, and how healthcare workers are prevented. Healthcare workers like me, by the way, are prevented from working directly for clients. We have to work for the government, and our job when we work for the government is to produce paperwork for the government, and patient care actually gets in the way of us doing our job. Like our patient wants pain relief. He wants to be more comfortable. He has this concern or that concern. Well, that distracts me from doing my job. I'm over here trying to do my job, which is produce a piece of paper for the state so they can have data. So it creates all sorts of skewed incentives. So I just talked about how we need to legalize healthcare and end prohibition. And the mayor of this town got up to the mic and said, "This is for the Libertarian candidate. I just want to say, you can take my universal healthcare and pry it from my cold, dead hands." And he drops the mic, and the crowd erupts in applause. And I'm like, how do you deal with these
30
bumper
seconds
sticker slogans, right? And so, you know, I what I said back to him was another bumper sticker slogan. I said, "Sir, I'm a paramedic. I give healthcare. I don't take it away." And the audience kind of like, "Oh, that makes sense." But you're absolutely right. There's this kind of theatrical component to politics where it's all about how well you're playing your part in the theater, and it's very difficult to get these very deep philosophical, powerful, beautiful messages across in bumper sticker slogans. But
a lot of these
listen,
are provincial, aren't they? The social services, the provincial issues.
Well, sure. I mean, well, I'll give you an example. Healthcare is a provincial issue, but it's also a federal issue. You know, and I'll give you an example. Like as a paramedic, I'm actually employed by the municipality, but we are contracted to the province because we can't operate our own ambulance service because of provincial legislation. Now, why is the provincial legislation that way, where we have to contract to the province and be controlled by the by Alberta Health Services? Well, the provincial legislation makes them the sole provider of healthcare or controller of healthcare, because it needs to align with the Canada Health Act. And so, you know, in order for my municipality to control ambulance services, and for me to even have the legal right as a paramedic to provide services charitably or for pay to clients in my community, the Canada Health Act has to go. Even though it's really technically a municipal issue, it's all connected and all intertwined back to the federal system, and it's the Canada Health Act. Because if we're not in compliance with the Canada Health Act, then we don't get billions of dollars in health transfer payments from the federal government. And so the province would never say no to billions of dollars of our taxpayers' money coming back to us in this province. Of course, the Libertarian answer is get rid of the Canada Health Act, eliminate an income tax so the federal government doesn't have this giant carrot with which to control the provinces, and we go a long way to solving these problems. But you know, everything's so intertwined, it's hard to separate these things.
See, that's so brilliant. I'm so glad that
Be easy to get rid of. I mean, it's basically the federal government's just promising to give civil servant money to send another civil servant money. It's not really helping anybody.
Well, I'm so glad to hear that somebody with some executional component, not only knowledge, but life-saving knowledge. Tim, you've actually saved people's lives. That's fantastic. Is weighing in on the issue. So that's exactly what we need more of, people that actually understand the infrastructure. It's not people like me weighing in on healthcare. Let's be honest. I don't know the issue. I can tell you what it's like in the Cayman Islands, where I believe it to be a lot better than the Canadian healthcare system. But it's people such as yourself who know the issue, who understand the infrastructure. And when people like you weigh in on the issue, it makes a lot more sense than when people such as myself weigh in on the issue.
Fair enough. Well, that's the thing. I mean, I can't execute anything. All I can do is speak fairly authoritatively on my, narrow domain of expertise here as a healthcare worker / firefighter, and hope that packs a punch. But speaking of expert executional thing or whatever, I have to get ready to go to work. I have a lot of stuck farts and free healthcare to deal with tonight. It's insane right now. I'll tell you guys a little bit. I've never seen it so busy in the past 2 or 3 months. We're just stretched to the breaking point in the healthcare system. And it's not because of COVID cases. I mean, I think I've had one COVID case in the past 3 months in terms of a patient I've dealt with. And that guy was being a bit of a wimp. He was 21, and he basically had the man flu kind of thing. He should have just stayed home. But the problem here is that we've become enculturated to depend on the government, and over the past year, all the messaging we've been getting from the state is don't trust anyone but the experts with your health. You certainly can't be trusted with your health. You need to shut down your business. You don't have any personal responsibility. You're not essential. You're essential, and we, the expert, the authority here, determine that. So it's almost like people have forgotten that they own themselves and that they have some agency over how their health outcomes are, like what's going on with their body. And so we're just getting inundated and slammed with calls, non-acute calls, just people. And I think a lot of it also has to do with isolation. Like people have been isolated and atomized over the past year to the point where they're lonely, and that sometimes a healthcare worker from the state is the only source of human connection they're going to get. And so we're just getting all these inundated with emergency calls for stuck farts and aches and pains and stuff that, people are they get it for free. So why not? Right. And on top of that, we have a system where I think I heard that in Edmonton, our neighboring municipality here, something like 40% of the paramedics are off on short-term disability right now from stress. And it's not stress from an overwhelming amount of calls from the pandemic. It's stress from dealing with the bureaucratic nightmare of people who have had their businesses shut down and who can't go to the movie theater and stuff like that. They are affected kind of at arm's length from the state. And we have to work directly for these bastards. And it's like every managerial Karen who's a manager comes up with different rules every week about what we're supposed to do. and we're jumping through more hoops and doing more paperwork and doing. Meanwhile, our patients are suffering. We can't provide the care we want for the serious ones, and we're getting this inundated with these non-acute cases of people who are just looking for some human connection, and it's just burning us out. You know, dealing with the nightmare of the bureaucracy, and so it's no wonder that 40% of, and it's, I don't know what the numbers are with the nurses, because Alberta Health doesn't publish these numbers. The only reason I know about the paramedics is because I know some people who know some people I'm closely connected to. They're not going to publish any of these numbers. So, you know, tonight I'm going into work to deal with a failing healthcare system where I'm going to be, you know, from stem to stern, dealing with the consequences of a centrally managed, centrally planned, horrendous system that is treating people that don't need to and not treating people that do need it. And that's where I'm going to deal with. So I'm going to build up my expertise, fellas. Appreciate your time and you listening to me rant a little bit and unload. Because
to walk.
Well, you know, Tim, you bring up a great point about the centralization of healthcare. I've worked at homeless shelters before, and let me tell you, I mean, it's easy to interact with the people when you absolutely want to. And I've had my own personal experience in having family members that were addicts and were homeless, one in particular, and he was adopted into the family as a young child. God bless his heart. I really miss him. But he lived to be well into his early 60s. But in dealing with the people within my community, it's not a huge community. It's only 36,000 people in my town on Vancouver Island, and it really came down to how do you interact with the people. It wasn't there's a staffing shortage there, which is part of why. I mean, you mentioned the mental break. I had to resign because it was just a staffing issue, where I was getting as much hours as a person who was on full union benefits because they're backed up. The Salvation Army, which is an NGO, is enforced now by a government under BCGU, and they enforce things like that all the kind of socialist policies and all the kind of air quotations. Like, how do you even go about saying that in 30 seconds? Really,
exactly.
And even the elite on it are like, they have such a high trouble of doing that they spend that entire time attacking people instead of actually giving out a platform. And that's why the NDP just never wins. That's why the Green Party never wins. They may talk common sense, but when you meet them and when you meet their leaders, and you know, I've gone out and met Jagmeet Singh. I've gone out and met Elizabeth May. I've gone out and met Trudeau and Maxime Bernier, and it's like, really, it's all the same garbage. Whether they want to sing their quotas, they're all different. It's like, no, they're all the same. And the only politician, personally, in my opinion, anyway, you guys may disagree, is Mr. Polyev, being probably the most true conservative, and in some respects even self-identifies as a libertarian. By contrast and by his own example. It comes down to management, and that's what it was at the homeless shelters here in my community. Is it came down to that, and actually, I'm not under an NDA with these guys, so I can go ahead and say it. And even if I wasn't, I'd go ahead and say it anyway, because people want true, clear-cut honesty here. A lot of them are affiliated with Green Party and NDP, so they're quoting the same things and enforcing that on an NGO. You know, at the same time, it's like, well, an NGO is a non-government entity. I mean, that's what everyone should strive to be. And when you go about doing that, and you basically tell the government, well, this is our property, get off. You kind of go and tell them, it's like, well, we're voluntarily helping these people, and they're not using tax dollars by a means of force. They're using it by people donating and what resources they have. But it's really sad where it's also a union that is lacking so much employment because of incompetency of people that are in the Green Party and NDP for it. At least in my region and for Vancouver Island, it's disgusting.
Awesome. Yeah, no, it's a challenge, and you could go on, like it infiltrates the culture, right? Having this top-down centralized bureaucracy where you're treated as a cog in the system. And so healthcare workers are experiencing compassion fatigue, and they're experiencing moral injuries. You know, when I have to fight with my bureaucracy about getting my patient who has a pulmonary embolus to the correct hospital because they want to send them to a different hospital because of their rules, that is another blow. It just sucks when you're trying to advocate for your patient and you constantly have to strum. Anyways, I could go on and on about this. I gotta go. Yeah, but Ant here asked, will this be uploaded as a video? And yes, as soon as we end the broadcast, it will be basically available as a video at the Liberty Experts and also on our Facebook page, right where you're watching it. So thank you everyone for joining us. Thanks so much for the great questions, and hopefully we'll see some of you at convention next weekend. Thanks guys. Bye.
Good day.
Bye.
Peace.